or I shall live your epitaph to make, or you survive when I in earth am wrought.
Whee! Yay, Mina! Good job! Yay!
From hence your memory death cannot take, although in me each part will be forgot.
Go, Gigi, go! Here we go! Go, Gigi! Come on!
Your name from hence immortal life shall have, though I once gone, to all the world must die. The earth can yield me but a common grave, when you entombed in men's eyes shall lie. Your monument shall be my gentle verse, which eyes not yet created shall o'erread, you still shall live. Such virtue hath my pen, where breath most breathes, even in the mouths of men.
January 24th, 2014. The world would make way for Giana Vicosa. She would be born to her parents, Robert and Marisa Vicosa. It wouldn't be long until they would welcome a second child. On June 8th of 2015, they would once again bring forth another girl, a girl who they would name Aaminah. With 2 children and loving parents, it seemed as if life was complete. They would even purchase a home. The family would settle down in Windsor Township, Pennsylvania. By neighbors' testimony, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Everything seemed okay. It was just your average family living a dream. The man of the home himself, Robert Vicosa, was an officer of the law. He was employed by the Baltimore County Police Department, located in Maryland. He wasn't an entry-level officer. He was actually a sergeant. By then, he had been there for years. But that would all change in the year of 2019. It would be this year that 3 female co-workers would accuse him of improper conduct. They accused him of watching inappropriate videos in their presence, as well as making remarks. In all, he would face 6 different allegations, and in the end, he would be found guilty of 5 of the 6. Now, the board recommended that he be terminated, but he wasn't. He would instead be given a 2-rank demotion, as well as a 45-day leave without pay. When taking a demotion, you also have to take a pay cut. So, life is no longer the same, and that begins the stress. The problems would then spill over into the once happy home. Now, it isn't clear exactly when, but somewhere along this route, Robert and Marisa would separate. But although they had a separation, they maintained a healthy relationship for their daughter's sake. By the year of 2021, Giana would be 7 years old, while Aaminah was 6. They were both students at the Pennsylvania Cyber Academy. Giana was a 3rd grader, while her sister was in the 1st grade. Giana was someone who was smart. She loved math. She also wanted to be a scientist. She was someone who was loving and caring. Her dream was to invent a robot that could help her mother do all the chores. As far as Aaminah, she wasn't a far cry from her sister. She had a passion for animals, and her dream was to become a veterinarian. Both girls enjoyed nature. They were a lover of flowers. They were also artistic. They enjoyed drawing and coloring pictures. They were described as both funny and silly, but also very affectionate. With their bubbly personalities and bright smiles, it was no secret they were going places in life. But as they say, nothing is ever what it truly seems, and something was about to happen. A tragic event that no one saw coming. Friday, November 12th, 2021. On this day, Robert would invite Marisa, along with their 2 daughters, over to their old home that they shared in Windsor Township. The reason for the meeting is because around this time was Marisa's birthday, so Robert had invited them over to celebrate. By all accounts, things went great. They would celebrate, and then they would put the girls to bed. But when Marisa made her way to the door to leave, Robert would stop her. He would tell his estranged wife that he had a gift. He wanted to give her a bracelet, but immediately after telling her this, an unknown woman would come out of hiding. In that same instant, Robert would pull a weapon. As she's being held against her will, the unknown woman would grab her and drag her down to the basement. She was then forced to take something, an unknown substance. Now discombobulated and essentially out of her mind, she's shocked and wondering what's happening. How could a celebration that seemed to go well end up in this state? Marisa Vacosa has now been in the basement for hours. While she's still in a daze, Robert and the unknown woman take her upstairs to the bedroom. Once in the room, Robert would repeatedly violate her. This would take place on Friday night, but also on the next day, Saturday. He would repeatedly tell her that if she tried to leave, he would not only harm her, but the girls as well. Sunday, November 14th, 2021. By midday, Marisa had convinced Robert to let her go. As Marisa was leaving, he would once again remind her what was at stake, what he would do if she went to the authorities. In the beginning of her release, she was paranoid. She wasn't sure if Robert was tracking her phone or not, so she was scared. But by 3:15 on that day, she would come to terms that the right thing to do is contact the police. After all, the girls may be in danger. So she heads to a Target and she calls them. In a situation like this, you would think you know how it goes, right? They would call in the cavalry, break down the doors, rush in, and play the knight in shining armor. But sadly, that's not how it goes. In fact, they didn't even issue an Amber Alert, but it doesn't end there. Instead of issuing an arrest warrant, they would instead opt to tell Marisa to file a protective order. So she does. She fills out the paperwork, but she's still worried about her daughters. Now you would think that they would put surveillance on the home, just to be sure. But guess what? They don't do that either. In fact, they outright refuse to do so. While Marisa is getting the paperwork handled for the protective order, they're also drawing up a search warrant. The search warrant would in fact be signed on that Sunday that Marisa went to the authorities. However, they came to the conclusion that it would be better to wait until Monday. At that time, the officers were working under the notion that the girls would be at school that day, so it would be more safe. But unbeknownst to them, the girls were a part of a cyber school, which means they were basically being homeschooled. Little did they know that at the time of that decision, they were only giving Robert more time to get away. So Monday comes. It's now November 15th, 2021. Around 3 p.m. that day, the officers would go to the home of Robert Vacosa. When the officers gained entry, they would realize that no one was there. A cold presence lingered in the empty house that was once a place a family called home. In light of the girls disappearing, they would immediately be reported missing, and their father would be reported as a wanted man. They would do their best to track down Robert and the missing girls, but by the end of Monday night, they were no closer to finding them. The next day, Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, the York County Police Department would be contacted by a woman. She's calling the authorities to report a crime. She tells the officers that a man, who was accompanied by 2 young girls, had just left her property. Upon leaving her home, the man took both her keys to her car and her cell phone. It turns out that Robert had crashed his vehicle into an embankment. After crashing his vehicle, he took him and the girls onto this property in which he crashed. There was a vacant camper. He then spends the night there. In the morning, the woman comes out to confront him. After all, it's not his property and he doesn't know her, so he immediately pulls a weapon.
He comes out with a towel wrapped around him and a gun on me.
He then tells the elderly woman he won't harm her, that he only wants a fresh set of clothing. The woman explains that both Robert, Aaminah, and Giana were all soaking wet. They did, after all, crash into a water embankment, so they spent the night soaked. The elderly woman then gives the girls a blanket.
So I had cartoons on for them. They didn't say nothing. So I said, "Is your daddy going to hurt me?" And they said, "No, my daddy's nice."
She hands over the keys to her Jetta Volkswagen, her cell phone, and Robert takes off.
"Take my money, take the car keys, just leave me alone."
The authorities would then take down the information to this cell phone in order to track it. They would track the cell phone to an area of East Lancaster Street in Red Lion. When they arrive to that location, they witness a Jetta Volkswagen. But when they get to the vehicle is completely empty. There's no sign of the girls, nor any sign of Robert. Unable to locate them, they decide to keep tracking the phone in hopes that it will still be active, that he makes a call, or at least goes somewhere so they can follow. At that time, it's a shot in the dark. he does have a law enforcement background, and surely he wouldn't be dumb enough to keep using it, but he does. He uses this cell phone to call an unknown woman. The stolen cell phone would then ping in an area at a home, but it wasn't just any home. When they do the background research on the owner, come to find out, it belongs to a woman who goes by the name of Tia Bynum. Tia Bynum was also an officer of the law and also employed at the Baltimore County Police Department. After getting the location that the phone last pinged, the officers would show up and Tia Bynum would be present. She would tell the officers that yes, Robert was here and he was here with the 2 children, but he left. He's no longer around. When questioned on if she knew where he went, she would say no. She would also deny having any involvement in what transpired. With no real evidence, the officers would leave, but they would return later that evening with a search warrant. But when they got to the home, Tia Bynum was no longer there. But although she's not present, they did know the vehicle she was driving, a black Lexus, so they put a bolo out on the car. Like deja vu, Tuesday night would end, and they were no closer to finding the girls. Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. Officers would learn that a man in Cockeysville, Maryland, had just had his car taken. He says there was a man, accompanied by a woman, as well as 2 little girls. He would explain that he was first forced inside of the vehicle and then forced to drive around the Maryland area for hours. To his surprise, he would be released, unharmed. November 18th, 2021. Shortly before 5 p.m., an SUV would be spotted driving erratically. This SUV matched the description of the vehicle that they were looking for. They would be spotted right near the Pennsylvania border in Maryland. When the state troopers saw the vehicle, they would attempt to pull it over. But as soon as the lights and the sirens went off, the vehicle would make a run for it. The chase wouldn't last long. It would only be about 30 seconds. The SUV would run off the road. It would hit a culvert and then land into a grassy area. The officers were reluctant to approach the vehicle. At this time, the scene is filled with smoke coming from the vehicle. The inside of the vehicle is clouded as well, so they can't see inside of it. The authorities would then round up the negotiators in order to try and contact Robert to plead for the girl's safe return, but there was never an answer. They would then decide to call in the tactical team. They would gain entry using the passenger door next to the driver's seat. Upon entering the vehicle, they would witness a female inside of the driver's seat. She's deceased. The woman in question is in fact Tia Bynum. They would then turn their attention to the back side of the vehicle, and in the back seat, they would find Robert Vacosa, also deceased, alongside of Giana, who met the same fate. In that same instant, they would discover Aaminah Vacosa hanging on for dear life. Aaminah would be airlifted by a helicopter and transported to the local hospital. But sadly, upon arrival, she would also be pronounced deceased. The autopsies would confirm that each victim had succumbed to gunshot wounds. When the officers initially found the SUV and attempted to pull it over, they described them running. They would also notice that when the car veered off the road and hit the grassy area, a brake light was never applied. As soon as the lights and sirens went off, Robert pulled a weapon. At that moment, Tia Bynum, who was driving, would be hit. She would immediately lose consciousness and veer off the road, hence why they never saw a brake light. Robert Vacosa was in the back seat with both Giana and Aaminah. He would then turn the weapon on them. Once he carried that out, he would then turn it on himself. This would all happen in a matter of seconds.
Tonight, a candlelight vigil at the girls' home in Windsor Township, York County. Our Daniel Hamburg was there. Daniel.
Well, Alicia, it was, of course, a very somber event, but one key message throughout was that everyone needs to lean on each other to get through this, and that happened tonight.
As far as a clear motive, there really isn't one. No one really knows why Robert did what he did. The real relationship between Robert and Tia still isn't confirmed. In some reports, they say that they were good friends. In others, they say that they were more. If I had to offer a theory, I would say This is the deed of a man who lost it all. Earlier that year, Robert had been terminated from his job of 17 years. He was also separated from his wife. There was also rumors that he took out a loan on the home and that he was getting ready to lose that too. Now, I can't confirm that. Again, that's only speculation. He was a guy who was at rock bottom, and at rock bottom, he acted. He most likely wanted the mother to suffer as he felt he was. But if you ask Robert's mother, she would simply say he was depressed, and he snapped.
When I saw it on TV, it blew me. I couldn't believe it. Right now, I wouldn't wish I'm going through what I'm going through on any mother. My heart is so heavy right now. I called my daughter-in-law and asked her, let us work this out together. This could have been worked out.
Your daughter-in-law is who?
Marissa Vacosa.
The mother of the two children?
The mother of the two children.
But it wasn't.
My baby snapped. This mental health is real. People think if you suffer with depression or PTSD that make you crazy. You're not crazy. You just need some counseling, maybe medication, maybe therapy, but you're not crazy.
What happened to Aaminah and Giana is completely tragic. But to pour salt on the wound, they were so young and taken out by the hands of someone who was supposed to love them. My heart truly goes out to the family. I have no words. In the end, we know that Robert Vacosa was responsible, as well as Tia Bynum. And although she too was a victim, she did partake in this. And how was she rewarded? She was met with the same fate. There will always be a question on whether or not the police acted quick enough. They did, after all, refuse to put surveillance on the home. They refused to immediately go to the home and apprehend him. They would then wait almost a full 24 hours before conducting the search warrant. And if I'm being honest, Robert's hands are filthy, but they aren't the only ones who were dirty. Turns out, the court thinks so as well, because the mother was recently awarded a $2 million settlement. But although that precinct paid civilly, it doesn't bring back Giana and Aaminah. They will forever be 6 and 7 years old. One wanted to be a scientist, while the other wanted to be a veterinarian. And now, it's no more than a dream that could have been, but now, it's only a what if. Rest in peace, Giana and Aaminah Vacosa. Thank you for being a light for others.